Welcome to WLJA, Common Law Under God. I am Luciana, and we're here with Catherine Hine. Are you having trouble hearing me, Catherine? Just give us a second here.
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I can hear you now. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Why is it a different story every time? Every time we do this, it's a different glitch.
It's always something, huh? It's always something. Can you hear me? No? Okay. All right, just give us a second here. Okay, just give us a second here. Okay. All right, Catherine, we're going to try this one more time.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me at all? Okay. We're having technical difficulties tonight, so I think we're going to maybe...
Cannot hear you.
Okay. We may come back on at 9:30. If not, we will see you guys shortly and announce when we'll be back.
I'll disconnect my phone entirely. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. Now now she can't hear me. Okay. Yeah, no audio on your end there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and cancel, and we may be back up at 9:30 if we could figure this out.
How about that?
Oh, now I can hear you. But I don't but I don't know if you can you hear me, Catherine? Yeah, just having some issues here. You can't hear me at all, huh? All right, so we're going to take a break and see. We might be back at 9:30.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Wow. All right. Okay, so we're just going to cancel for now.
You want to check your mic, maybe?
No, my mic is fine.
I wish I could read lips better.
Okay, we'll see about coming back in just a little bit.
Something happened. What'd you do?
Nothing. Can you hear me though?
I still can't hear you.
No. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. My mic is on. Yeah, it says it's on. Okay, muted on, and you can't hear me. Okay. Hello? Yeah, it says it's working on my end. So I don't know. We might have to try to come back in a little bit, okay? Okay, Catherine, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm getting a dial tone though. So
Oh,
I
oh,
turned
well,
my
you can
dial
put,
tone.
no, I don't hear it, but I think you could set the phone aside maybe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Okay.
could. Okay, perfect. Okay, we're doing better now. That took a minute. We're
Yeah.
sorry. We apologize for that. I'm Luciana, and for those of you that don't know, this is former Ohio attorney Catherine Hine, who resigned from the bar in Ohio in 2019. How are you doing today, Catherine?
Better now that I figured out what I was doing wrong with getting
Okay.
on this call. Okay.
That's okay.
All right. So let's start. I wanted to start with a Bible verse I referred to before, and particularly the end of, I think, this will be in the nature of a prayer, and I'm thanking God for the warning from 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 11 through 18. I won't read all of that, but I just wanted to hit the high spots of this. Was kind of a follow-up from Genesis 1:26, where God granted us dominion over all his creation. And the people, of course, refused the gift because they wanted a king, no matter the warnings. And God shared with Samuel what would happen. This will be the manner of the king who shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots, and he shall appoint for himself captains over thousands and captains over fifties, which actually happened in the Middle Ages, and will set them to plow his ground and to reap his harvest and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. And it goes on about all that would happen and all that has in fact happened. At the end, in verse 18, and you shall cry out in that day because of your king, whom you shall have chosen, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. And I'm just, my prayer is that this judgment, which we richly deserve, will be suspended as long as we do finally wake up and accept the gift of Genesis 1:26 and allow only God to be ruling over us.
Exactly.
May his judgment be spared to us, even though we don't deserve it. Amen.
Exactly. Amen. Amen for that. Yeah, that's for sure.
So I want the title of tonight's broadcast is if you can't defend it, you don't own it.
Right. That says a lot. I was going to share the notice that you want me to share, right?
Yeah, there's it's this doctrine is at least as old as the Middle Ages. So going back, 900 or 1,000 years. It's called the Castle Doctrine. Oh, wonderful! You got it. You got it up there, really nice.
Okay. I just did that real quick. Put it together while we were trying to figure this out.
You didn't retype it.
No, I just got it from what you sent me.
All right. Okay. As y'all know, I am very challenged when it comes to computers. So, yeah. If I try and aim the microphone, all right, there we go. Maybe that'll work for a while. Okay.
I'm sorry, Catherine.
So, let's get a little more duct tape on the subject. All right. So, one of the things that you're gonna have to be able to do is defend your property physically, certainly, and that's what the Castle Doctrine was for. It gives you the right. It expresses the right you already have to defend your property with deadly force. And even the de factos have a statute that says basically the same thing. So
Correct.
it's a little bit dumbed down, like their statutes are. Their statutes typically take common law principles and they rig them up a little bit to be ineffective. But that the gist is the same, and actually, in their statutes, the same right exists when you're in your automobile. So they didn't. That's not part of the original doctrine because they didn't have automobiles then. Okay, I think I may just go to audio at some point. Maybe it's so distracting. Okay, so anyway, there's a couple of ways that we can lose the home that we live in or other land that we own.
And that's been happening a lot lately. We've been hearing many stories of people losing their homes recently. A lot of land grabbing going on lately.
Oh, yeah. This is actually, I remember even back near the time, it was probably in 2005, 2006, somewhere in there, that I was talking to one of the secretaries at Ross County Common Pleas so-called court, and she was explaining how we're just inundated with foreclosures. That was then.
Yeah.
And I don't know if some of them were bank foreclosures or they were property tax foreclosures. That's usually the two kinds that you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if somebody gets a judgment against you, so one of their fake judgments, then in their system, as long as you stay in their system, then they can foreclose on the judgment and compel a sale of the property. But as long as you understand that the fake tribunal that's issuing all these orders for sale and judgments and blah, 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 don't have any authority to do anything, and you can get them to admit that through our 3-notice process. They always admit it. They admit it 3 times. Then they don't have a judgment that's valid anymore. They've just got, they're committing assaults. You know, assault is the threat of violence, and a foreclosure is a violent act. You know, they come out and they're armed and they trespass all over your land, and they will physically remove you, your children, and they will use whatever force they feel like. And oftentimes, even let's say they claim $50,000 for back taxes, and they sell the property for $100,000. They'll just keep the extra $50,000. You know,
that's crazy.
That's just typical. It's not even legal in their system, but they do it, and they do it constantly. And the people are so distraught over losing their land in the first place, they don't even think that there's a possibility that they could prevail on anything at all. By the time they pay an attorney to vindicate the equity of redemption, I think it's called, it's all eaten up. So, but people, you don't have to go through that. Let me just get into what usually happens when you finance a property. You sign you sign a note, a promissory note that you're going to pay X, X amount of dollars. And remember, it's with interest, and it's compounded, which is, not lawful to compound. I mean, this is considered usurious interest. Usury was prohibited in the Bible, and it's prohibited in a lot of state statutes even. But they do it anyway. It's in some of these contracts, mortgage contracts. So, but what you've signed actually gives authority for them to get the full amount of what the seller. Say you're buying a property, you're buying it for $100,000, and you're financing $100,000, and you're actually authorizing them with your signature. That's why I say signatures are very powerful things. You're authorizing them through your signature to remove $100,000 from your Social Security trust fund. Okay. So they get paid that day. They haven't lent you anything. You've authorized them to pay it. And then you agree to pay it again with interest, compounded.
Wow.
And you usually agree to pay property tax. Now, let's say you have it free and clear and you're no longer under a contract to pay property tax, but you start paying property tax, and then you realize that you're not under a mortgage anymore. You start paying property tax, but they're not actually authorized to. They don't. I've never found a statute in Ohio, let's put it that way, that gives some kind of authority to collect property tax. They tell you how they compute it, and they have all kinds of little ways that they assess it, and they do this and they do that. They're not a property. The ability to tax is the feature of sovereignty, and they're not sovereign, so they can't really impose the tax. Now, if you agree to pay it, they'll take the gift.
Do you think any of this has to do with the land patent that a lot of people are not aware of on their properties?
I went down that road, and really there's already a presumption that you have allodial title. You have the same title that the king originally had. He was considered by divine right to be to own everything. And when we became the sovereigns, then we were presumed to own what we purchased through that was given to the states through acts of Congress. And we were also, each state that it was admitted to the Union agreed to be to consider each state a republic. So that means that they can't impose anything on you, like any government action at all against your will, including a so-called government action of taxation. So one of the big excuses they have for imposing the property tax is that they are doing you a service. So you get sort of a contract theory. We do you a service, you got to pay for the service. The service is we record your deed. That's the service. And you're going to pay us $5,000, $10,000 a year for the privilege, the benefit of having your property recorded. If you want to forego that benefit let's say your property is already recorded with the corporate entity doing business as if they were the county. It's already recorded. So you have to, if you want to not pay for that benefit anymore, you can transfer the the property from the current holder to some other entity. And what I have done, and it has worked well for me, and I own not more than just a homestead. And I was able to transfer the property to a common law private membership association. And
Okay.
I was the agent for my all capital name that owned the property.
Mhm.
And I later informed, I sent a notice to the recorder and the people involved in all this, the sheriff, everybody who might give me trouble with this, and let them know that I was the authorized agent for the record owner, and the records are wrong now. And I'm also the authorized agent for the transferee that now is the true owner. And I didn't give them a copy of the deed or anything because it's none of their damn business. And I sent them the notice, and then they, I gave them a certain amount of days to respond, and they didn't respond. And I'm not, nobody's going after me for property tax. And when you go on the auditor's website, you can't see my properties anymore,
Wow.
which is fun.
And how long ago did you do this?
It was about 1.5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And
far
they
that's
published
good.
lists of delinquent property taxpayers, and I wasn't on there.
Really?
Right.
Very interesting. We'll have to do a show where you can teach people how to do the private membership association, how you did this.
The private membership association has a lot of uses, not just for this. Some people might want to transfer their property to a trust, but I don't like trusts. I think that they're a bad deal. The ones I've seen end up getting interpreted by, cabal members. I mean, I suppose you could avoid that, but I don't like the idea that you're splitting up the title of something like land, for example, into an equitable owner, the trustee. No, the equitable owner being the true owner, the beneficiary, and the name on the title being the legal owner. That's just that there's nothing biblical about that. We're going to split title, and part of it's going to be this kind of thing, and part of it's going to be this other kind of thing.
And a lot of them do that. They have a lot of their property in trusts and such.
Yeah, I think it's a bad situation. Now you're supposed to, trusts are supposed to be private, and so you typically, with land, you don't record those. Sometimes I've seen like one page of the trust recorded. They know there's a trust because, for one thing, they're still oftentimes recording in the name of the trustee. So they know there's a trust. Once they know there's a trust, they will mow you down to get to it and interpret it so that they get all of it, and attorney fees and court costs and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So
I had someone contact me earlier today. They had a situation where their mother is in a nursing home because she had I think your phone is close to the mic, Catherine. Maybe that's why I hear some back feed. I don't know. I think that's better.
If I cover up the ear, maybe does that help?
It's better. Their mother's in a nursing home, and they say that because she had a hip replacement surgery, while she was in there, I guess the niece or her niece or somebody and her family works works with the administration offices, I think, for the nursing home. They somehow talked her into signing over power of attorney to them, to her niece, who works for the administration of the nursing home. And now she wants to go from the nursing home somewhere else and isn't being allowed to do that. Also, her niece, who took power of attorney, also, first of all, the lady in the nursing home had one of her daughters on a bank account with her. With this power of attorney, that administrator from the nursing home, who's her niece, actually went in and was able to drain that bank account without any kind of signature or anything from the woman's daughter, whose name was also on the bank account. And
she got the daughter to cooperate.
No, the daughter didn't know anything about it. The daughter should have been there to sign anything, and she wasn't. So first of all, I don't know. I was telling the person that they have to send notice to hold whoever at the bank allowed these things to happen, to hold them liable for committing the crime of allowing money to leave an account.
Yeah, they're supposed to be holding your funds in trust for you. They have a fiduciary, the duty of highest loyalty and care. You know, they're always going on about, oh, well, we saw this suspicious transaction on your
right
card, you know.
Well, all of a sudden, somebody who says they have power of attorney came in and has been draining that bank account, and the daughter has no access to it anymore. And I said, they can't do that. And they're like, they did. And now the mom,
More details to that.
they can't, the daughter wants to bring the mom out of the nursing home back to come live with her, where she was living before the surgery. And the niece, who has power of attorney, is not allowing it. But
yeah,
then again,
she wants to maintain the business relationship with her employer.
right.
To keep the woman there. And yeah, that's
so dirty, the whole thing.
That's another way that these land grabs are happening, is through the interference with the normal inheritance process. And it's easier when there's, now that they used to be very popular, these living trusts, but they can pierce through those pretty easily. This is also known as, elder abuse or elder predatory guardianship. They oftentimes will kidnap the elderly person, which sounds a lot like what the niece did in your situation, because if she's not being allowed to leave the nursing home, she's being held a prisoner in the nursing home.
Right.
And oftentimes there's issues of, well, is the elderly person competent or not? And oftentimes they will take a document, even a trust, from 20 years before, when whoever made the trust was clearly competent then, and they will start messing with it later. They will start modifying it after the person is probably no longer competent. That's the classic thing. And then what happens is you have a contest between one of the people, one of the relatives, a son or daughter, and someone else, another son or daughter, a niece, like you're saying, and then the fake tribunal that they all think they have to go to and
right.
do what they say. Then the fake tribunal says, well, we're going to resolve this family discord. We're going to appoint somebody from outside the family. Then it'll be neutral. Well, that's what happened in the Roger Hillegas case. They appointed, and there's businesses that do nothing but professional guardianships.
Yeah.
And they hook up with these corrupt probate judges.
I found that, I think it's a probate, in the probate court. you'll see in one of them that I was looking through, you could see a bunch of these judges and attorneys filing motions to to take over guardianship of somebody all the time. They're like, it's like a bidding contest or something.
Yeah,
It is.
and
I'll show you later the
they're
ones I
based
found.
on their hourly rate. I can do an hourly rate less than that guy. That sort of thing.
And they just can't wait to be a guardian over somebody and take over all their money and all their affairs.
Sure,
And
sure, but I wonder how they bid, because I think it would have to be, I mean, to make it competitive, it would be based on, I don't know if it's not going to go to the lowest bidder anyway. It's going to go to whoever's most connected. And that was probably not the stated intention of the person whose assets it was. You know, when they did a will or a trust, or I've not seen this with a common law private membership association, but that can be an effective means to keep your property in the private membership association. Maybe what would really be best is for property to not get disposed of at the time of death, because particularly if there is like a family business, or the property could be turned into rental property. I don't know. It would be up to whoever is appointed as the successor trustee on the trust after the elderly person passes, to determine, you know, what's the best way to manage this, whether it's a trust or a private membership association. It doesn't mean that it's got to be split suddenly. The elderly person has died, unless that's what they want.
You know, it's concerning, and I think a lot of people are, what could we do situation when they have an elderly person, let's say, owns their home free and clear, and they're getting older and up in years. I guess they have concerns that this guardianship situation, I mean, all it takes is one visit to a doctor, and one doctor to say, oh, they can't manage by themselves at home. Even if they have another son or daughter, or someone, you know, staying in the home with them, all it takes is a doctor or a nurse, or even a secretary, I've heard before, to call and, you know, and say, you know, this person's in age, or they can't be alone at home, even with their own sons or daughters caring for them. And then they go, I mean, how does somebody protect their home and protect their elderly when the state or cabal just wants to jump in and say, no, we're taking over now?
Well, that's why people have to get out of the cabal. I mean, that's yet another reason why you don't want to be in the cabal. And if you correct your status early while you're still competent to do so, then you're in a position to stay out of their fake tribunals that they call courts. And it's not, the issue wouldn't come up, anything else. Now, and of course, you don't want to record property. That's part of doing business with them. If you're recording into their corporate county's records, then you're back in. You've just undone a good bit of what you did with your status correction.
Who's actually doing the recording? Is it the property owner, or is the bank doing that with the recorder's office?
It's generally whoever's got the original, and usually that's going to be the buyer has the original deed, unless they've got, if there's a mortgage, you know, the lender, so-called, this is on property that's already been paid for, you know, by the Social Security Trust. The lender is going to keep the title, and they may be the ones that push for getting it recorded. And I know that attorneys push hard for it to be recorded. I was told at one point, some time ago, in connection with another property deal, that you can't transfer property unless you record it. What? That's just a flat lie. You transfer property from one man or woman to another man or woman, and by deed, and you don't have to record it. That's up to whoever the buyer is, whoever is the transferee.
Right. And what about the land that the property is on?
That it's all the land, and you should always refer to your land as land or your private property. Don't call it real estate. Don't call it real property. And it's just another way to keep yourself out of their system, is to not use their words. When you start using their words, then you start being bound by their definitions of those words, which may be pretty perverted. So you're usually going to be in a good position if you call it your private property. And so, all right, I'm sorry, I'm missing the point of your question.
Because I was reading something recently, and somebody else asked me about it, that when you buy your property, you own the home, but then the land where the home sits, the land is not yours unless you claim that land and get a land patent on that land.
A lot of people are making a lot of money teaching classes on how to track back to the original, to statehood. And in the case of Ohio, in one way, that there's a whole story with that, because Ohio probably did not become a state legally until 1953, not 1803. They screwed up the paperwork. But anyway, let's say it became a state in 1803, which everybody thought it did. Then you're presumed to have a allodial title already. You're assumed to have that the first grant in land grant states, such as Ohio, you're presumed to have ownership, full ownership, because you're sovereign. That was the deal. That's always been the deal. And
I think I was reading
in the Constitution, and I can cite you the clause that direct taxation is prohibited, at least by the federal, the federal government. But all these states of states, state of Ohio, I mean, it's just a subsidiary of the federal government, so I think it still applies. And I'll dig that out in a minute, but it's they're prohibited from direct taxation. Direct taxation always meant land. Land means the land and all fixtures on it. Fixtures meaning structures, any water, any vegetation. That's all part of the land, and that's all of what you own. So. Yeah, a fixture becomes part of the land.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and people need to be reminded that they have a right to protect that land and protect your family who's on that land and on your property.
Right.
Where
And
you are.
the people who are trying to threaten that, I mean, none of them has any claim to that land. They're just employees of the legal fiction. And the legal fiction isn't saying it owns the land either. And I haven't tracked down exactly the theory behind this, but really corporate legal fictions can't own anything, probably because they can't exist lawfully. So, there's under what authority are they coming on your land and, trying to take you off your land? There is not any authority. But and people used to defend their land much more so than they do now.
Much more so.
Yeah, I mean, it helps if you post this castle doctrine sign, if you fenced your land, if you
Put no trespassing signs up.
with a fee schedule. You know, your first act of trespass is going to cost you personally X amount of dollars, and the second act of trespass, it will be more and more and more. And that way, by entering the land, you have accepted this offer. And then you have a contract with them that they're going to pay for all the trespassing they do. They usually turn around and leave.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's another theory under which they can take land, or at least in their minds, they can take land, and that's eminent domain, where they're again, but that's based on the theory that they're sovereign, that they can take your land for a public use. And they have to prove that there's a public use. If you're playing in their system, if you're not playing in their system, I don't see anything biblical about eminent domain. That seems to be something that they just dreamed up.
Yeah.
And don't worry about along the lines of not using their words. Don't be claiming a homestead exemption. It works kind of like with the way people reacted to the COVID jab, threat, that they claimed an exemption. An exemption says, yeah, you have the right to do all this stuff to me, but I'm special and I'm exempt because of this, this, and this that's in your rules. And most of the time they'll say, you're not really exempt and we don't accept that. And it's our rule, so we cannot accept it if we want to not accept it. So once you start down that road, or you start down the road of saying, I'm a national, I'm a this, I'm a that, you start using any of their words, then you're going to be bound by what they define those words to be. And right. even if they get the definitions wrong. So once you go down the road with exemptions, you're in their system again, where you don't want to be. So you got to stop doing that. Claiming exemption is just a way to dig yourself in deeper in hopes that they'll have mercy on you, that they'll give you an exemption in their beneficence. And you're just groveling when you ask for an exemption. You have to ask for it, after all. We don't ask these people for anything and expect any good outcome. But once we start asking, then we've given the authority to them. Yeah.
It's just so much has gone on this way for so long, and people are so used to, they have to ask for this and they need a license for that and permission for that. They don't, absolutely can't even fathom that there's another way to live, which is
I was just watching.
To live.
Go ahead. I was just watching an interview between Jordan Peterson and a Dr. Stuart Jensen. And I think they were, Stuart Jensen is a physician, and he was also U.S. Senator for a time. Jordan Peterson was a university professor of psychology, and they both started making statements that were not approved, that they were censored for, and now apparently they're going after Dr. Jensen's license. What do you need a license for anyway? But I mean, both of them in the interview, they were both so bent out of shape over, well, we're not going to have our little permission slip anymore. And well, maybe we have to grow up a little bit and stop relying on these false honors that the cabal confers on us. And they confer a lot of fake honors on us, titles and positions and wealth. You want those things, Satan's your guy. He'll get those things for you. But if you want to live free under God, you will find another way to use your skills that they want to license and use it directly, as a man or woman to help other men and women, where you don't need permission from anybody. And I'm suggesting that part of, creating our parallel economies is to start getting used to the idea that we don't have to work for corporations. We don't have to accept their permission slips. We don't have to accept their titles like, attorneys do, like doctors do. Like they want to license absolutely everything.
Everything.
And you don't need those things. Hi, Barbara. So I know they're nice. They're nice to have. I mean, it's nice to have the status and the glory or whatever. That's a good that's a good byline. Yeah.
Just a reminder, because we know there's those out there looking to harm us because we're trying to teach people, the freedoms and the rights that they unalienable rights that they have given to them by God, and what they've done, they've created this term sovereign citizens. And I don't know why people go ahead and use that term. It's, first of all, an oxymoron. Second of all, it's created to when there's someone like us trying to teach you the truth and guide you and show you the truth here. They don't like that. And so they will label you a sovereign citizen, which also makes you a domestic terrorist, according to them. So, yeah, I just wanted to make it quite clear that we are not sovereign citizens for anyone watching, trying to label us that for any reason.
Nobody is. Some people might claim they are. We never claimed to be, or we never would,
Insane.
It's sort of akin to the conspiracy theorist thing. They FBI came up with conspiracy theorists around the time to label anybody who did not believe that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in shooting John F. Kennedy. That's what it was originally invented for. And then it was found to be useful in other contexts as well. And they're finding the same thing with this term sovereign citizen.
I'm gonna go ahead and add Barbara for a moment, okay?
Yeah.
How are you doing? Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
Hello. Nice
How
to
are
see
you?
you. I'm doing well. That's a loaded question, right? It's
Isn't it?
how well can you be when you're dealing with crimes against humanity by the government? So that's what we're here to try to remedy. And so I hope that we, I hope that we just make progress quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And take action.
It's going to take people, just one at a time, stepping up and playing a small role. I mean, this is not flashy stuff. I mean, this is not stuff you get. The work we do has no glory attached to it, particularly. It's just a lot of hard work.
It is.
And,
it is a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours, with no pay, and we're trying to help out who we can. I look back at the years that have passed, and I'm so angry with myself for not doing this sooner. So once learning about this, it still took me, I think, 2 years after learning I could do this, I could do that. And it still took me 2 years, but finally, after a lot of prayer, a lot of prayer, and a lot of it, I think, has to do with people having fear of what's going to be done to them if they pull themselves out of the system, if they correct their status, if they join a common law court of record, by we the people, if they come out and say that we know that these departments and these buildings that you're operating under, you guys are private corporations, and people are afraid.
But there's more to fear about what they're already, we're already dead men walking, So
well, it's also not the fear so much as the ignorance, which is really so outrageous because they choose to put blinders on. So maybe some of them do have fear, and yes, there is the retaliation factor, and that's why we have to act as a united group of people. But I was just on a Zoom call talking about the same issues, and there are victims that are working against us, and there are certain things that really press my buttons. And so, somebody does something that goes right into their criminal conspiracy racket, and then everybody on Facebook or, other victims are all on board. So I'm going to give you an example because this is something that we just talked about, and I'm going to say it. And I don't know how many people are listening to this, and they're all got blinders on, and they're not going to pay attention, and they're going to continue to do what they're doing. But there's people whose children are being trafficked, and then they're murdered by the parent that's the abuser, and they've been in front of these judicial black robe criminals over and over and over, with warning signs of all of the abuse, that, there's guns in the house and these people are raving maniacs. And the corporate criminal, understands, he knows exactly what's going on, but he's getting his paycheck and he's getting his incentive bonus to continue, and he's getting paid by the state and using our taxpayer funds. And so the child is murdered. And then the mother or the spouse that's not the abuser goes running to the legislators, begging them to put together another code that's called by the child's name, because they think that for some reason that's going to solve the problem. Because now when they go in front of the same judicial perpetrator, with another code that says that they have to pay attention when these people talk about the domestic abuse and whatever, the problem's now been solved. They've got a dead child murdered in collusion with the judge, and now they've come up with another code rather than putting the judicial criminal in jail. And all this code is doing is funding the racket. It's giving them training, like some judge doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know the crimes he's perpetrating. It's maddening. So the reason I raise it now is because there's just been a little flurry of activity over the last few days that a few of these codes with the child's name have been enacted in law in Florida and New York. And everybody on Facebook is celebrating. They just think it's a wonderful thing. And so every now and then I put a little blurb on there saying, you've just conspired to a code that funds these criminals and explains to them exactly how. And it's like deaf ears. They don't understand it, and they just continue. And so it's the victims themselves. And this is kind of like following up to, Luciana, what you were talking about, that you wish that you had stepped up, a few years before. These people, the victims, and I include myself because it's a process. But once you get there, it's so obvious. And you've got Catherine that's saying the same thing. I'm saying the same thing. Luciana's saying the same thing. We've been to the end of the road, right? Catherine, you've been through it. you've gone to the end of the road. You were part of it. Luciana, you, me. I mean, I've been in, I can't even tell you how many courts. And yet it just all falls on deaf ears. And so the victims are perpetrating the racket. They're not even victims anymore. They become conspirators and perpetrators. And so I'm not as, maybe patient and calling them fear and whatever. It's so beyond that. We are in such a crisis right now. And it's inconceivable. And so, I don't know whether that's something we can talk about, because you can't, if a person wants to be ignorant, they're just going to stay ignorant. There's nothing that we can do about it. But I'm hoping that people are listening and that this is making an impression, because, to have these children that have been murdered with a funding, another funding code. And that's just one small example. There's so many of them, but excuse me for throwing that out, because you were probably talking about something else. It's really important that gets put on the table. And there may be some other examples, because these people, these victims are still begging the criminals what is for restitution, stop it. And so that's what I'm here to say. You've got to stop it, because you're not only hurting yourself and your child, but you're hurting the next person. You're hurting the next, you're hurting the next family. You're part of it. You're a criminal conspirator. So now I'll yield.
That's true. That's true. Very true.
Yeah.
And these statutes and codes that they're spending long hours, lobbying for, they're not law, and they don't on their own terms. That I don't know how they figure that they're going to arrest anybody for anything ever in their code world, when all their statutes talk about persons. They know good and well that persons are incapable of committing crimes. People can, but not persons, not the way they define it. So this is part of their system, the cabal system, that we're not harming you. We define the terms, and you choose to overlook the terms as we're using them. So it's not our fault, the whole concept of caveat emptor. If I screw you over in a deal, it's not my fault because I screwed you over. It's your fault that you're so stupid you didn't see it coming.
What was the term?
That's the philosophy. Caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. So if I sell you, some swampland in Florida and tell you, it's whatever, and you believe me, and it's your fault for believing me. And I've had this happen to me, where I was told point blank a lie about what the property included and didn't include, and filed suit on it because I had plenty of proof that the lie happened. And I was told, no, you're just stupid. You shouldn't have believed it. And it was a realtor, and two realtors told me this. One, my realtor, and the other, the realtor for the seller, told me, yeah, that piece over there, that's part of it. Yeah, but it wasn't.
And all it would have taken was what? You doing your own investigation.
And that's true. I should have gone to, I should have had a title search done before I even made an offer, I suppose. And, I should have had a really, to figure out what was included, would have taken a survey. How many people do that before they put an offer in?
We put a lot of trust in people that have titles.
That's right.
A lot of trust in that title.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
But then, and where we seek remedy, where we seek remedy isn't there for us. It's not for us. We're not going to get anywhere that way. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, we're I don't know, even if, for people who are listening to this, maybe in other states where you don't have a real common law court or a common law grand jury, you can still accomplish a lot. If you look back on our 3 notice process, I think it was the second broadcast. And there's a lot you can do. Just one man or woman, taking on other men and women, because whoever's oppressing you, they're probably going to do it in a corporate name. And once you look behind that and tell them, I don't recognize corporations, they're illegal and unlawful. And, and if I'm wrong, tell me. And they don't, within the allotted time, then you're only dealing, it's hard to deal with a faceless, nameless corporation. But if you break it down and you're dealing with people, then you've got something. Because people like to use those corporations and their titles and stuff to do that which they think they can't do as people. But that corporate title doesn't give them anything. It's the truth of the matter. So I don't know. Is there anything else we ought to?
I think we gained two new members to our court. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've done their status corrections, and
those will be up soon.
We're them in tomorrow night, aren't we?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it'll be good.
Well, for people who think we can't form our own courts, look at Chisholm versus Georgia, 1793 U.S. Supreme Court decision. They admit we sure can. We are the source of all law, not them, not corporations. We damn sure can do this, and we are doing it.
We are doing it.
Yes.
Doing it.
Yes.
And Attorney General, Chief of their Supreme Court, they've all been notified. It's been over a year and a half that they were notified that we were starting the court and that we did our public notices, and no one objected, and we were going forward, and they have not a peep from them, not a peep.
I may as well mention it on this broadcast too. I took it upon myself. I ran this past the people who are advocating for Roger Hilligus, who's locked up in Nevada. I posted a notice of formation of common law assembly for Nevada and put myself down as a contact person. Not that I live in Nevada, but to have somebody that can be notified. And I posted it on a couple of Nevada-oriented Facebook pages. Of course, people are too frightened to even comment. But
isn't that something?
Yeah.
I mean, they have nothing to say. It's just they want to complain about it. They want to start groups, and you got these groups talking about, look what they've done here, and now look what they did there, and look what they did to him and her and to this kid. And
somebody ought to do something. Somebody besides me.
Yeah, and you come up with, all right, let's do this. You have a right to do this. And they won't even comment. It's like they won't even comment back. I don't understand it. They have too much faith.
It's mind blowing. And so
it really is.
I think that I had posted in several Nevada groups about the grand jury and gave them my email address, gave them Catherine's information to join, to look at our broadcast from last week. So I get a flurry of likes, right? They send me a like, and then they send me like a little note, thank you. And I'm just wondering, like, what world is this? Like, they're in one world and their kids are kidnapped and trafficked, and Lord only knows what's happening to their kids. And they have the opportunity to step up. And these are Nevada groups. and they send me a like. And this is just a story of the way it goes on Facebook. And so, has our country been so dumbed down? You can see I'm outraged at the victims. I'm outraged at the victims because the victims are the ones that hold the remedy in their hands. We're not going to get it from the government. The government's not going to remedy their crimes. And so what is it going to take? What is it going to take? It's not going to be, by the ignorant victims that just simply won't wake up. And so we reach out to other groups that are finally becoming enlightening, and we continue to reach out to other groups that are finally becoming enlightened. But the longer you sit there and you push that like button, your child is being trafficked. If your child knew that you were pushing a like button instead of stepping up, it's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. And I will keep saying the same thing over and over and over until somebody wakes up. Because again, you're hurting the next person. You're hurting the next mother, and then we've got people that like to grandstand, that they're the victim and that they enjoy being the victim, that their problem, their victimization is now taken control of the whole case. Oh, and let's not forget parental alienation, right? So we've got crimes against humanity being perpetrated, atrocity crime, murder, serial murder, genocide. Somebody came up with this term that they like to use, parental alienation. So now they are off to the racetrack using the term parental alienation. Somebody must be making some money by coining that term. I mean, are there books coming out using parental alienation? Call the crimes what they are. They're not like your spouse is not speaking to you and he's alienated your child. The government has kidnapped your child and is money laundering and making money by doing it. And so here we go. I'm going to keep saying the same thing over and over, and maybe, a few more people will wake up. And it seems like maybe in your group that has happened. If you've got, others that have joined the group, maybe, but
it's been very painstaking. It's been very little by little by little, a lot of people will go right up to the point of joining and then they decide not to.
Right.
Yeah, that's happened. Yeah.
That's
they lose their courage at the end there.
Yeah. Right.
Or maybe they're listening to someone.
It's so disrespectful for what you're doing, because you, just like me, this is 24/7. We're not getting paid. We're not collecting a paycheck. We're not doing other things that we could be doing to get a paycheck or to do other things that are more gratifying than dealing in these swamps all day long. And so for people to disrespect what we're doing is just another victim conspiracy to continuing the racket. So I guess if I have to be the person that's going to be beating up the group to step up, so be it. I'll do it because somebody needs to do it. So,
the brainwashing has been going on pretty hot and heavy ever since the Civil War, because after all, we were supposed to have a government by consent of the governed, right? And yet there was a group that, did dissent and they wanted to leave. And the southern states and the people in the southern states, and they were slaughtered as a consequence of that. Since when has slaughtering been a remedy for breach of contract? I've never seen that anywhere. According to Lysander Spoon, the principle on which the Civil War was waged by the North was simply this, and it destroyed basically the whole idea of government by consent. The principle that the Civil War established was that men may rightfully be compelled to submit to and support a government they do not want. and that resistance on their part makes them traitors and criminals.
Sound
Worthy of
familiar?
death. Yeah. So that's been drummed into our heads since Lysander Spoon wrote, he realized it in 1867, and it's continued ever since. Yeah, I mean, that's the easy explanation is, you know, we're supposed to have a government by consent. It's still there in the Constitution.
But now we don't even have a government. We don't have a democratic republic. We have corporate contractors. So the longer we stay silent, what are they going to come up with next? What is the next, you know?
We don't have that. I don't have a corporate government because I don't consent to it. So it's not over me, except in certain areas where I have consented. And you can do that. You can consent in certain areas. You can decide to get a driver's license. You can, you know, use the name that they made for you to use so you could deal with them as corporations. You can do that if you think you need to. But you don't have to, you know, once you understand that you don't have to, and you can start building something separate, a separate economy that doesn't have anything to do with them. I think it will be difficult. I think it will be difficult for them to not only tactically, but, you know, as far as how they appear to the public. I mean, this is an information war, and it's also a crime spree, of course. But, you know, if they want to have the moral high ground. They want to appear to have the moral high ground. And so it's our job to poke holes in that every which way we can. They don't have the damn moral high ground. I think most people are starting to realize that that's the case. Maybe, I don't know. But that's the big change of the paradigm shift that happened over 150 years ago that we've got to deal with now. Let's see. Oh, I got a comment from Oksana. No, should notices be recorded in the county records office? No, it's corporate. No. And, you know, so it's a private record. It's not like you're posting it publicly. They want you to think it's public, but it's not. No, you don't. As long as you give notice to the people who you think will come in and try and grab your land, and they agree that they don't have any right to do that, then you've got a contract with them. And if you live in a state republic with a common law court, you can turn that contract into a judgment. And I think that they're going to have a lot of trouble getting their underlings to go out and risk life and limb to go against a people's judgment. I could be wrong, but if we don't do this, if we don't get our own lawful judgment that will expose that any of their fake corporate judgments of foreclosure or whatever are invalid because entered without subject matter jurisdiction, among other things, then, you know, we have seen some successes. So, you know, we know that this works. And the only time that people get in trouble is they get scared and they want to file. They want to contract back in some way or other, in a way that pertains to the transaction that they're trying to extract themselves from. So you can't send mixed messages. So
let's talk for a minute, Catherine, about one of the things that we discussed last time about the court watch process and how if there's something that we can do to take charge of that process because in my group, we're always sending out notices that there's some upcoming event they call a hearing where they're planning to commit some more crimes. And so, then we get a group of people that somehow or sometimes are able to get into the court. And then a lot of times they get kept into the waiting room. But any thoughts on doing something in advance, even though we don't have a technically, grand jury set up for necessarily that state? But, one of the things that we talked about was sending them a notice, which they know that they don't have jurisdiction. It's not like we're telling them anything they don't know. Listen,
Right.
Black robe wearer, whatever your name is, you're committing a string of crimes and you have no jurisdiction. Just any thoughts as to what to do in advance, short of, and not having a grand jury, but I just feel like that's a good opportunity to at least put out something.
Gather evidence. You can gather evidence there. That's really you can gather evidence there for later use, in a grand jury investigation. That's what it's for. Back in the day, when I thought that there was something legitimate about these tribunals, I was involved in court watching, organizing people to do court watch. I don't think it's that great of a deal. Particularly not if it gets you into rising when the black robed wonder walks in, and I don't want to participate in that stuff. But and you can usually get, well, I don't know if you can always get on, of course you can't. You can't always get honest transcripts of what happened. You can't get, honest audio files. You can't. So, and I have actually used that at times where I got a transcript back and it had stuff in there that didn't happen and it left out stuff that did happen. And the only way I could establish that was through an affidavit from somebody who'd been there doing court watch. So
right, but
but does it matter? It doesn't matter to the outcome.
Right. So what I'm just trying to establish is that, we're not in cases where people are arguing a traffic ticket or they're arguing, some kind of monetary remedy. This is real time where their kids are being abused, black eyes, rape, whatever else is going on. And so I just feel like if there is a critical mass, which a lot of times there's quite a few people that are attending these events, that are the criminal syndicate. So I would like to see if there is something that might, maybe like issue an injunction against them in advance, not a notice, but like a cease and desist. Maybe
it doesn't have any legal effect.
No, I know nothing has any legal effect whatsoever because you're in a racket. But nonetheless, it's better to do something than nothing. And maybe
I'd rather put my energies on the bottom line than steps along the way that won't really get at the problem, because because of time constraints in a way. I want to work on the process that will actually lead me to a judgment and lead me to establish the facts, for one thing. And that's one thing that they like to play games with is those facts, and the notices, the 3 notices can at least establish what those are. And they can't ever come back from that. They can't.
Catherine,
So we have so much contempt for you, we just decided to ignore your notices. Yeah, okay. We are the people, we are your constituents. And I don't think that's going to fly. That's probably what else can they say? You ignored a serious notice 3 times, really? Even after the notice itself gave you all these warnings? I don't know. That's not going to fly with people who are already angry with them, I don't think. And that might get you closer to being able to form your grand jury. I don't know. I wouldn't want to spend my precious time forming another kind of a body that has no teeth to it.
Yeah.
Whereas, you're much closer to getting that with a common law grand jury. Traditionally, grand juries have always had a lot of power, including subpoena power and investigative power. And that can be another photo op if they resist that.
Right. Somebody in the chat is asking, can you please let us know how a person is defined in their definition?
It's like a person is includes. That's how they put it. A person includes, and they list a bunch of things, including corporations.
Right.
And in their world, includes means it means this and nothing else. So in their world, if I define a tree includes oaks and elms, is a pine tree a tree? No. And there's a Latin phrase that explains how that works. And, I can pull that out, but in interpreting these statutes. But if you look, throughout their codes, it's always person this, person that, or resident, or occupant, or plaintiff, or defendant, or all the other names that they use to avoid calling us men and women or living souls or, anything that they know is outside of their realm that they don't control.
Here,
And
I
they've
just pulled up
control,
I just pulled up the definition of person under their U.S. code. 1048 definition person. The term person, they do. The term person is defined in 18 U.S.C. 2510 number 6 to mean any individual person as well as any natural and legal entities. It specifically includes United States and state agents. According to the legislative history, only the government units themselves are excluded. So that pretty much, comports with what you were saying that they, yeah. So they think their term person covers pretty much anything.
Yeah, but a person is a legal fiction.
Yes.
It's definitely not a living being.
Here's another section, 15 U.S.C. 7, person or persons. Boy, they really like putting in a lot of definitions of persons. The word person or persons, wherever used in sections 1 through 7 of this title, shall be deemed to include corporations, and associations existing under or authorized by the laws of either United States, the laws of any of the territories, the laws of any state, or the laws of any foreign country. Does that make it real clear? Let's see. They have another definition.
Right.
I wonder if their definitions apply, depending on what they want to see the outcome be. Like, do they refer to, let's pull out this code and let's make it work for this particular enterprise that we're going to be carrying out under the guise of a court. So let's see.
Regardless of the area they're supposedly, enacting legislation, they still never use the term man or woman. Here's a question on the chat. Okay, the first question was, should the notices be recorded in their recorder's office? And the answer is no. Contracts you back in. Then who should be informed about rebutting presumptions? The people who are in charge of whatever entity you're afraid will be used as a pretext to use some presumption, like on the birth documents. They use the all capital name to presume that you are a person, and so you serve your notice not on the Social Security Administration that uses the birth certificates, but you serve the man or woman who is in that office. Okay, if some corporate office does something, we ignore. In law school, I remember there was this concept of stripping away the corporate veil. You remember that, Barbara?
Piercing the veil.
Piercing the veil. Right. Well, it's more than just a veil. It's more like an iron curtain. But we can just ignore it. And we cut right through to the people who are running that imaginary entity. And because they're the ones that are actually responsible. So that's who we notify. We don't have to worry about filing anything anywhere. Just serve them notice on the people. And then they'll have some other explaining to do. Why are you operating a legal fiction and using it to threaten people with loss of their homes and their children and all this? Didn't you know it didn't really exist? It's pretty clear. Even in their case law, they say corporations aren't anything. They can't do anything. So how did you get any higher power just because you work for one of them? You don't. It's still just you, the man or woman, doing things in the corporate name, whatever that is. I think maybe we've gotten too used to corporations running everything, or their agents running everything, I should say. Just the way we talk about current events. Well, Russia did this and China's doing that, and the United States, what? These are corporations. These don't exist. What do they really mean? What are they really saying? What they're really saying would be about maybe what's his name? Joe Biden did something. Yeah,
if he still exists.
If he still exists, the living man or the living clone, whatever. He can do things, and he can have intentions, and Putin can do things, but it's so unclear when you use the term, when you're really referring to a corporation, who in the corporation you're referring to. So I think, and I think Mel Samper made a big point early in his book, From a Poisonous Tree, that the people, the best thing we can do is get clear on our language. And because if we're not able to communicate, some have said too, we're entering a second Tower of Babel. We're talking one thing, and people we're talking to are hearing something else. Let's say Charles Stewart has commented, lawful authority to adjudicate cases and enforcement thereof are two separate issues. Yeah, they kind of are, but a corporation doesn't have any authority to adjudicate any more than they have any authority to enforce something that was not, that they can't enforce that which they were incapable of adjudicating to begin with. So
No jurisdiction, no jurisdiction.
no jurisdiction. It's just another way of saying no authority.
And
And
like, and Catherine, like, once someone does their notices and they are not rebutted and they just stay silent, and our court takes jurisdiction of this case and names the crimes that that court or the people in that corporation committed towards somebody,
Mhm.
they can't just come forward and just take jurisdiction of the case from our court.
They can try to do a whole lot of things, I suppose, but they recognize the spiritual principle that you in legal principle, I suppose, lawful principle, that you cannot administer that which you did not create. Unless you have some other kind of authority, like by contract, by consent, by an act of God, something else would have to give you authority if you
They give themselves authority. They
do.
Yeah.
But it's fake authority. I mean, this is true because I said so. That's not going to fly. They do that a lot, and there's a rampant use of hearsay, and a lot of lay people don't really know exactly what that is, and it's just anything someone else said that's introduced for the truth of the matter. And they, besides operating on presumption, they operate on these hearsay statement reports, and what some other so-called fake tribunal, so-called court decided, or a newspaper article, or even an affidavit, if it was not properly executed. And then there's an issue with affidavits too, where there's no right of cross-examination. That's a big issue that the hearsay rule was meant to avoid. Is somebody can say something, they can phrase something in such a way that it's almost impossible to rebut, but you have to be able to cross-examine. And anyway, but the hearsay rule, like all the rules, are something that we the people are the authorities on, not them. But I just noticed that every time they're doing anything, like these property taxes, for example, it's all based on reports. The report from the assessor said this, and the report here said that. And then you look at that report and it refers to something else.
Yeah.
Same deal with they lock up people for psych eval purposes. The psych evals are full of, well, we report nurse so-and-so, last week reported to so-and-so and they said this, and it's all hearsay. And then they put it into a report and they shine it up, and it's a report. It's a psych report. We have to pay attention.
Right. We have somebody in the chat that just wrote that. Go ahead, Barbara. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, as you were talking about these things, we use the word trickery, right? Because everybody understands legal trickery. So I was just going to look up the definition of the term sorcery. Sorcery, like it's devil's magic, and so if people would just kind of understand that there's really no legitimacy whatsoever, you don't have to get into the trenches too much. It's trickery. And so while we take that next question, I'm going to look up the definition of the word sorcery and see if that has any
somebody in the chat looked up the
what is Charles saying? Correctability is a
somebody just wrote down the definition of person. They looked it up in the Oregon statutes, and it says the word person, wherever used in this chapter, shall be construed to mean any person, partnership, joint stock company, unincorporated association or society, or municipal or other corporation of any character whatsoever. That's a person.
And why do they have authority to define anything? There's that. They can define what the terms they're going to use in their statutes and codes. Yeah, I'll give them that. But they can't make us bound by that. And they can't make us consent to that if we don't consent to it, and then punish us for not consenting to it.
Right.
We do ex parte in secret, right? So we don't even know they're doing it. And then we're going to be bound by it? On what planet?
Oh, they love to do those ex parte orders, especially in so-called family law cases. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. As you know.
Yeah.
Luciana.
As I know.
Yeah. Right. And now they sold that to us, I think, big time with the Violence Against Women Act that they put out there. Their fake legislative bodies put out there, and where you could get ex parte orders because there was an emergency, right? And they do that to grab kids. CPS uses that to grab kids. There's an emergency. Only, wait a minute, where are the facts, at least, even from your point of view, CPS, where are the facts that back up that there's an emergency? Just saying there's an emergency does not make it an emergency because we said so.
Right.
And they never have that. There's innuendo and maybe, and then they've already got the child.
Here's the definition. Here's the definition. Sorcery. This is a good definition from Wikipedia. People sometimes don't like to use that, but it's a good definition. Sorcery, magic, supernatural, the application of beliefs, rituals, or actions employed to subdue or manipulate natural or supernatural beings and forces. I mean, they've in the word supernatural, but natural beings. Pretty good. That's pretty good. Happening in the courts. Sorcery, right? Sorcery.
You're breaking up, Barbara. But I think you made your point, that maybe they think that their decisions have some sort of supernatural power, you suppose?
There's so, and there's a lot of information out there. If you dig and research that these courts, a lot of it has to do with a lot of evil stuff like sorcery and these words that they use. The wordage is just meant to really trap people, and it's insane.
Well, a lot of I know I had this happen. I'm representing the non-offending parent of a child who'd been subjected to ritual abuse, and some of the acts that they perform, during the ritual abuse, they dress up in bizarre costumes and stuff so that when the child reports, it sounds crazy.
Yeah.
That's the point. So I thought that was why maybe something that was just meant to be, getting away with garden variety incest, if that's what you want to call it, or abuse. But maybe it was also part of the ritual. And I'm sure in a lot of offenders, that's what it is.
Yeah. Jeez.
So, yeah, but we're facing I guess she lost her connection there.
Yeah, it looked like she was fading away. She'll probably be back.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had asked in the chat, what does ex parte mean? And
without the parties, so behind somebody's back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, granting some sort of order without a response from the other side.
Without the other side having any input or even knowledge that
Or even
that
knowledge.
is being considered. Yeah. And that the only way, but see, they use these little techniques to sort of semi-justify that by saying, oh, but we can do it. We can't normally do ex parte stuff. That would violate due process, wouldn't it? If you go behind somebody's back and get an important order against them. But if we call it an emergency, then all bets are off and we can do it. And we will do it. And then after a while, it didn't seem that important to even have an emergency, not even an allegation of an emergency. And little by little.
Yeah, along the definitions of emergency, when I thought that we really had courts and I wanted to present things as an emergency. So I actually looked up under their rules, to find emergency. And I don't believe they have like an emergency proceeding under the federal court rules. Have you ever come across that? I never found it in federal court, and I never found it in Florida courts. I found I had to use different terms to get to emergency, but the objective is that it's supposed to be heard the same day. But did you ever? I've never come across any of their rules that talk about an emergency, how something gets adjudicated, and what constitutes an emergency. Isn't that was so bizarre to me. There were so many things that should be so obvious should be included, but I remember spending an inordinate amount of time trying to find emergency. What are the proceedings for an emergency under the federal court rules? And I never found it.
Because it's whatever they pick and choose that day to be an emergency. Like in my case, it was an emergency that a mother might take back a child when all the codes, statutes, and everything show that mother has abandoned the child and has no right to the child now. But
they wasn't besides her.
I'm sorry.
They were adjudicating other people's rights besides hers.
Right. And it didn't seem to be an emergency that the same child was, now that they put the child with the kidnappers, now all of a sudden that child is showing signs of extreme physical and mental abuse, emotional abuse, and photos with all this physical abuse. The emergency didn't seem to fit what they call an emergency then.
But isn't that bizarre that even under their fictions that they would come up with some definition of emergency, if only to justify, what they're doing as an emergency. So they never, I never found any reference whatsoever anywhere in any of their codes.
I've got the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Usage of the term emergency refers to a sudden, unexpected happening, an unforeseen occurrence or condition, specifically perplexing contingency or complication of circumstances, a sudden or unexpected occasion for action, exigency, pressing necessity. They like necessity too. They use that to justify their so-called judge-made concept of parens patriae. What necessity, and that's just an invention, Whose necessity was it, We use this in our notice against Mike DeWine, the state of Ohio CEO, in the COVID fiasco.
Right.
And because they were using that to justify the draconian measures they were taking against people, who weren't masking up. And they admitted, they were wrong on all of that stuff. And anyway, yeah, when we got to the end of the third process, they had stopped ordering masks. They had stopped arresting people who weren't masking up, as far as I know. But yeah, we could go further with that judgment we got if we had more people.
Right, right.
Speaking of which, I don't know how many people are, part of the audience or making, sending questions, but for those that are, please contact us. We need you. We need your help. We appreciate your questions. And Catherine, do you want to, I don't know if you've posted your email address, but contact Catherine and be a part of what we're doing. So thank you for listening to this and thank you for presenting your questions, but get on board, and be a part of the things that we need to have done. So Catherine, did you post your,
Yeah, I've got a number of email addresses. You may as well just contact me at wljaradio@aol.com. That's wljaradio@aol.com. And then there's another, if you go to the OCCR2021.com court website in the contact us section, you've got another email for the court and a phone number.
So let's hear from you. Speak up. Be a part of this.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
If people can't make a phone call, they probably can't do much of anything to stand up for themselves, unfortunately. So, I won't bite your head off. Yeah, you can call me. So, there's a question: can people from other states? One gal commenting that she had previously lived in the former Soviet Union. She said, "I thought USSR was bad. Now I see it was quite good. Not perfect, but pretty good at least. No CPS and foreclosures ever."
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? That is so interesting. I always, whenever I speak to people from other countries, I'm so curious about whether they have this kidnapping racket going on. And so I've never gotten a definitive answer as far as Russia's concerned, but
I think more and more.
That's a real eye opener.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, they're now that they're a corporation too. I'm sure there are signs. I know when I was in Uruguay about 10 years ago, I spoke to some people who were well aware of the use of parental alienation syndrome there to enable incest.
To enable incest?
Yeah, because they said, well, a child would never report sexual abuse unless the non-offending parent were brainwashing her and to alienate her from the abuser. That's what it was originally for. And it was a defense attorney's dream. Oh, Dad couldn't have, let's just use as a short, an abbreviation, that Dad's the abuser, Mom is the reporting party. And when Dad's attorney can make the argument, well, Mom is just such an evil witch that she's brainwashing the child, she's alienating the child from the father, and she's forcing the child to falsely disclose abuse. That's what it was for. And any little thing that could be brought up, and I've seen it used, also known as malicious mother syndrome. There was no malicious father syndrome, of course.
Really? I've never heard that one.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Huh.
And and then it's morphed into other things. But it was so useful to defend pedophiles with, even in criminal cases. Much less than to enable the accused offender to get custody of his victim. He's the victim now. And, in their eyes, he's a victim of parental alienation because he was accused of raping his daughter. So it has multiple uses. Anyway, I remember doing a deposition of this Dr. Charles Johnson not too long before he ended up resigning at Children's Hospital. This must have been in the early 90s or mid 90s, and he called parental alienation syndrome. He was considered the Ohio's primary child sexual abuse expert in his day, and he said parental alienation syndrome is a pretend syndrome, in the sense that the way it was being used then, there is no credible evidence to persuade anybody that a child can be brainwashed into giving consistent reports over time of abuse that never happened. And then, of course, when you have corroborating evidence of that abuse, these are all just things that they do in their system, but things that common law grand jurors are going to have to think about too, and hopefully not get distracted from. So
Yeah.
we don't want a grand jury to become another Tower of Babel, and maybe that's why it's taking as long as it's taking. I don't know, but I intend to just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
I'm right there with you. I'm
Yeah.
not stopping.
I know. You are too, Barbara. As far as people from other states, I believe other states, it would be best for other states to, and I would be happy to help people from other states to form their own common law assemblies, which should be to really take back your neck of the woods, your county, your neighborhood anyway. You need to have a common law court and a common law grand jury and a common law militia, or if you'd rather call it a neighborhood watch, that seems to be more politically correct these days.
Right.
But militia is the term used by the Second Amendment. Not that we're protected by the Second Amendment necessarily, but
And
yeah.
but now they're using the word militia, police, and everyone, police, FBI, they're using that word as if it's a terrible thing that these people are part of a militia.
They don't. Well, yeah, because they don't recognize the Constitution, because they're violating it constantly, and they don't want to think of themselves as that.
The same Constitution they took an oath to.
Well, they want it to appear that way. They didn't. If you actually look, as we have, if we actually look at their oaths, they aren't making oaths to the Constitution. They only appear to be making oaths to the Constitution. They're really making oaths to whatever the Constitution or Charter is of the United States, the corporation. Corporations don't have constitutions, but they do have charters, like cities do when they're incorporated. So,
right.
Thanks, Charles. Yes, we do desperately need more common law courts all across the USA. And the problem with trying to have like a national kind of a grand jury, I think it would just be, it would lack credibility, because the states are considered foreign to one another. And so you can't really have foreign people telling, I don't think any of us would want who live in Ohio would want New Yorkers coming in and telling us what to do in
Right.
Ohio. And, every state has its own peculiarities and history and sovereignty, in the sense, not sovereign against the people, but sovereign as far as other nations. And they're certainly considered foreign to one another. So we don't want foreigners to sit on common law bodies in any state. People need to do their own. If they can't find, as many millions of people live in every state as there are, if they can't find 25 people to serve on a common law grand jury with a few extra for alternates, and 12 people to sit on a pettit jury, you're going to just have to rely on your notices to save you until you can do that. So, and your own notices, the power of one can be pretty awesome when you understand who you are and who they are. So maybe we're just not ready for that step to be taken everywhere. But anybody who wants to form a common law grand jury, common law court, I think you need the court first, because if you had a presentment coming out of the common law grand jury, where are you going to take it? And if you don't have a court set up, you need to have a court set up. So I think
and also, Catherine, on our website, which is occr2021.com, and they did some update that has an issue. So the top of the website, just keep scrolling down. That should be fixed in another day or two. But if they go to founding documents, they can see the process we went through to form our court.
And the status documents. There's a separate button for status correction where you can see each member of our court, and you can see who they are and what they did to, rebut the presumptions that the cabal had been using against them and can't anymore. So,
right.
Yeah, status documents. There you go. Yeah, you can see it's all there. We're expecting 2 more in a few days, so
yeah,
we'll be up to 10, and then we'll just need 2
no,
more.
Hopefully, if all goes well, those should be done tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so they should be up, they'll be up this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. It's been a long time coming.
Yes.
And there's other people, that express interest from time to time. As we increase our numbers, hopefully they will step up to the plate also.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else. We all have in common in all of our states that the cabal agreed to that every state would have a Republican form of government, which just means that we can we have a government by consent. If we don't consent, the 51% cannot vote to take away the rights of the 49% that didn't consent. And that's a guarantee they admitted to as every one of the 50 states entered the union. So that's all we had going for us, that and the Northwest Ordinance. And some of y'all have other treaties that granted you your land. As things stand now, the cabal doesn't own very much of the physical space in the country, what we used to think of as the country. So let's don't wait too long.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to have any parting words? We plan on keeping up this broadcast till next Thursday you want to do Thursday at 9, Luciana, or Thursday at 8? Or how would you rather do it?
I think Thursday at 9. Thursday at 9 seems good.
Okay. Thursday at 9 it is, Eastern.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. And
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
right.
And God bless you all.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Barbara.